Yeah, I know. Hey, we got it. We got it. Good morning, friends. Come on in. Those of you who got lost or ended up at Endwell and then found out it was here. I need to know, was the cider mill the thing that got you here?
Brandon got me here.
There we go. There we go.
There you go. I wouldn't know that.
Good to know. Good morning, Harold. Glad you're here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this district day. We haven't done these in a while. This is kind of a prep for annual conference day that we felt was particularly important given what will be before us at the annual conference. So we're very glad that you all took the time on a rainy Saturday to drive all the way here. If you're watching me online through our live stream, we welcome you. We want you to know that this will be up as a resource so that you can use it and perhaps share it with your congregation or share it with others who will be going to annual conference to know more about it. I want to introduce the local pastor who serves this church as an associate. That's Paul Reed, who's going to give us, who's also running stuff in the back, who's going to tell us where the restrooms are. And exits are clearly marked.
There is a boatload of food and excellent coffee, so make sure you get some.
Thank you. And if you are on the live stream, I'm assuming you can find the restroom in your house if you need to. So if not, you can call us. I am so glad to finally have these two friends together with me because I've never had them in the room together in these roles before. Rick Fisher has served for the last year and a half as our Oneonta District lay leader. He's with us today. Hi. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you.
And I am so happy in January that Tara said yes to be the Binghamton lay leader. And Tara and Rick have worked together. This was kind of Tara's idea, and Tara and Rick have really worked together. I just get to be the lucky son of a gun up here sharing with you, and I'm happy to do that. So I wonder if we can open today in prayer as we're about this work. Gracious God, we thank you for your presence and your love. We ask you to be with us as we consider some important things that come before us as Christians, as people of faith, that will make our context and our world more in sync with who and how we are. Be with us in love and in grace as we share, open our hearts and open our minds, that we might think, ask questions, and learn and grow today together. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to talk about dates, locations, registration, and logistics for annual conference. Many of you already know that, but we felt it was important to share that. We're then going to share what happens at annual conference, and then we're going to take a break. Woohoo! And then after the break, we're going to jump into constitutional amendments. I need to say that the constitutional amendments are kind of important. I was going to save these words till later, but one of the reasons I think they're so important is, number one, the discipline was written to them. So we're really hoping that they pass so that we don't have to change how we do things within the discipline. But the other thing is, and I'm not sure you're aware of this, for active clergy, you realize that the whole world has to approve our pension program. That's not something that just comes before the local regional conferences. The whole world has to approve it. And sometimes, I know this happened to me in Charlotte, delegates from around the world came up to me and said, "Why the heck are we voting on your pension?" And my response to that is, please do, number one. Although after this week, who knows? And And then the other thing is, this is the way that the church was set up. So we are changing how that happens in what I think is a creative and important way to understand how our context really works. So that word context is something you're going to hear some things about this morning, and I'm excited about that. And then we're going to take some questions, and then we're going to be done for the day, and you're out to your rainy day and off to other exciting things. So thank you so much. So let's talk about annual conference a little bit, if we can. It's going to be this year at the On Center. Now, there are things to like about the On Center and things maybe that we would rather not like about the On Center, just like there's things about OCCC that we like and things about OCCC that can be a little problematic. But this year with the On Center, the reason for that, by the way, complete transparency, is because our bishop serves 2 annual conferences now, and we both had the same week for annual conference. And the contract that Susquehanna had was one that was a multi-year contract. Ours was a single-year contract, so in looking at all that, it was the easier one to give up and reschedule for the On Center. So we're at the On Center. You got to register by the 15th. Now, as I've looked at that, that means Tuesday of next week. Get it done by then. Or there is, Carolyn, how much? How much? $50 kind of, yes. So you don't get food, maybe, if you don't register on time. So kind of important. So please get it done. If you get it done by the 15th, there will not be a problem with that. But if you do it after the 15th, that will not be the case.
And I'll say too, as someone who started a registration, thought I had registered, but apparently had gone on to do some other things during the day, don't forget to complete your registration.
Yes, press that submit button.
There was a helpful email that will come. Did you forget to finish? So that was great. And Rosemary helped me out.
And there is also there's a helpful email that comes that says, did you forget to finish? Please hit the submit button. And then there's another email that comes that confirms that, in fact, you are registered. That's what happened to me. I registered, and I never got the confirmation email, and there was something that I messed up, frankly, and I was able to go in and fix. So, you know, like we are all gaining in our understandings, sometimes we have to step a couple of times to get this to work really right. So is everyone here registered? Let me ask that question.
I am.
Thank you. Thank you. Some of you need to talk to your local churches about who, if you're going to be part of your local church, lay member to annual conference, and if you do, please do that and get registered. When you first get to annual conference, you'll want to check in the lobby where you will be welcomed by our wonderful superintendency administrative assistants who will greet you with open arms, literally. So glad to see you. You'll likely get a lanyard that's color-coded to your status. So if you're a clergy, elder, you'll get one color. If you're a local pastor, you'll get a different color. If you're laity, you will get a different color. And that just helps those who know who are distributing things, who gets what ballots, that type of thing. And then we have a draft schedule of what conference looks like. Let's just see if we can bring that up. There we go. So Thursday, we're looking at 8:30 a.m., 10 a.m. is opening worship, 11:30 is lunch, woohoo! 1 p.m. is clergy and laity sessions. Those are in separate rooms, and you will be told where those are. At 2:30 is a break, if everything goes well. 3 p.m. we open the entire session with clergy and laity together in a plenary. At 3 p.m., 5 p.m. is dinner, and then an evening session on Thursday. Then on Friday, again, registration is open all day for those that haven't arrived yet. 8:30 a.m. worship. with 9 a.m. being Bishop Hector's Episcopal address. At 10:30 a.m. is the memorial service. 11:30 is lunch. 1 p.m. is a learning session. That will be a time of instruction. And I don't have that name just at the tip of my tongue in terms of who's going to be leading that. Okay.
Sorry, what, of the memorial service?
The learning session.
Oh, the learning sessions. It's two authors of the book, Something Under 40. I think Rick will be sharing.
Okay.
If
Rick
not,
can share
there's-
about that.
Yeah.
We then have more business and plenary, things to get through at 2 o'clock with the 3 p.m. break, 3:30 business and plenary, 5 o'clock dinner, and then 7 p.m., as has been for the last 2 years, ordination on Friday night. This has really been helpful in terms of increasing the number of people at ordination. When we used to do ordination as the very last thing, most people are on the road home. So we think this honors our candidates in that way. Then Saturday, last day of conference, worship, the leadership address by the Dean of the Cabinet and others, 9:45 a.m. break, 10 a.m. business and plenary, including the announcement of appointments, and our closing worship at noon, and then 1 p.m. adjournment. And then there's hotels that we're going to be using. They are relatively closer, as you all know, and I think these are the same hotels that we have used in the past. So that all happens as part of your registration, so it does not. You've got to book your own hotel. Thank you. Some of this is that my hotel's already booked for me, so that's why I just am not aware of this. So part of your task, part of your assignment is to be sure you've got a hotel to stay at, unless you want to commute, which I'm assuming you can do from Binghamton or Oneonta. You can't do that necessarily from Buffalo or Rochester as easily, but do keep that in mind as we move forward, that you need to make those hotels. There will be shuttles offered from each hotel to the conference center. You don't have to book those. Those will be running. Now, one of the things I understand is that the shuttles will only be running in the morning and then in the evening.
The times will be published and
Okay.
made very well available.
Okay. So there was some question as about if there would be limitations. So in the middle of the afternoon, if you wanted to go back, you might not be able to do that on a shuttle, but you'll have a time schedule so that you can make those plans. You are also welcome to drive your car and park.
And the first three listed are actually within walking distance of less than a mile, if you are able to
If you're
walk.
into that
Yeah.
thing.
Yep.
In Syracuse. And I have walked from where I've stayed in Syracuse to conference and not had a problem with that at all. So I hope you would find the same thing. Let me say that if you drive back and forth, please find a way to carpool. Number one, it's good for the environment. Number two, parking is a bit more limited than it is at OCCC. So that is one of the drawbacks of being at the On Center. So please be aware of that. And if you have to pay for parking, please share that with the people you're riding with so that it's not a burden for anyone. So, and all of this information can be found. You'll see the annual conference registration guidelines right up there. All of that can be found there. So please make use of that website. And I think that might be the next slide. Is it? Nope.
You are talking about who the speakers are.
But Rick's going to fill us in as to what happens next. So
Thanks, Mom.
Hopefully, yeah, working. All right. Welcome, everyone. We didn't ask, is there anyone who actually has not been to an annual conference before? Okay, we do have one, and I'm sure people watching the live stream also may not have attended before, so we are trying to explain, basically everything that you can expect. But, you'll have to experience it to really know. So one of the questions was about some of the speakers. These are the speakers that we have. Bishop Sains, I believe, is it's another session. It's not a learning session.
The memorial service.
The memorial service. Okay, and then the
ordination. The ordination service.
okay, and then there was a Whedon, Reverend.
That's right.
Northern Flow. Mike Whedon, District Superintendent for Mohawk and Northern Flow Districts, will be doing the memorial service. So those are some things that happen that are not just business. It's not all business. There's some, very enjoyable parts to it too. I really enjoy the learning sessions, and hopefully this will be a good one. These Reverends Chris Sledge and Rachel Gilmore, they're co-authors of this book called Followers Under 40, and it's about how to engage the younger generations in ministry, the millennials and the Gen Z. They're going to be talking about their own experience doing that. Okay, we have another slide. Okay, so this is how you find resources. If anyone wants to QR code that, you could probably do it with your phone right now, but it would take you right down to that website where you can find all the resources about the annual conference. Or just go to the Upper New York website and look under Events 2025 Annual Conference. I'll leave that up there for another minute. I suppose there's a way on the live stream too that folks at home might be able to look at this too. All right, the technological guys say, but yeah, what to expect? I mean, in addition to the business, we have worship sessions, special music. The music's great. I mean, people love the music. The bands with youths, young people, energetic, and it gets us up and moving around. The conference staff do a lot to really decorate the place and make it feel like a church conference, even though we're in the On Center in Syracuse. Tables, meaning?
Oh, sorry, round tables.
Okay. Round tables that we'll all be sitting at in the area. We can get up and move around sometimes. Sometimes you might see a guy like Bob running around with a beach ball or a bubble machine or something like that, But we have to, take breaks sometimes and have a little fun. We have really good meals. That might be, we're not quite there yet.
Bob, if he had questions. That was your question slide. And where resources.
Okay, that was for Bob. We should be at what happens, I think, slide 11. What happens at annual conference? There we are. All right. So, like I said, it's not all business. There's some good meals. That might be one of the disadvantages. I've heard some people say that the food at the community college is a lot better than at the On Center. But,
It looks promising. There's salmon, there's steak.
Ooh.
Okay. Oh, looks good.
Yes.
They have a whole new kitchen experience.
Ooh.
They've upgraded the on-site.
So we're being told about
It's an experimental year. Be honest on your evals.
a whole new kitchen experience at the On Center, and they want us to be honest and giving feedback on the evaluations. So, think of that before you take a bite. And after, yeah. So there's the ordination service, which is always very beautiful and moving. The memorial service as well. Like I said, the teachable moments, I always learn so much from that. The bishop's address, which happens on the first day or the second day maybe, is a really great way of setting the tone for the whole conference and, where we are at as a conference and where we need to be. And most of the whole sessions are led by the bishop too. If you've never been there before, you would know that. The bishop basically presides over the annual conference and chairs it, recognizes speakers, and interprets rules and tries to help, even if you don't know all the rules, will help to guide you. So more about that in a minute. But in all these sessions, you'll hear presentations and reports and vote on recommendations and resolutions. That's the business part of it. Before voting, you'll also have a chance to discuss the report or the resolution or whatever is being brought before us. And even before that, too, we have opportunities ahead of time to do that, which I guess we'll talk about in a minute, too. Let's see the next slide, conference rules. Okay, you probably can't read all that, and you probably don't want to. But basically, this tells us like where the rules came from, okay, and that they were adopted by an annual conference in 2012, amended in 2013, and then again in 22. So the discussion and the voting is governed by these rules, and they're all in the journal, which you could look at on page 200. Yeah, at the link. And also general conference rules, which, apply to the whole denomination. Some of these changed, I guess, in 2020. The Advanced Daily Christian Advocate. I had to look up what ADCA meant.
If you want to find the general conference rules, they're in the Advanced Daily Christian Advocate, or again, there's a copy of them at this link. So some of the resources there are in addition to what you'll find at the Upper New York website.
And again, if you didn't already get that QR code, it's a way to quickly get to the resources. So, written by Roberts. About raising motions, needed to be seconded, need to be voted on. There's the procedure for introducing amendments to what's being said, and for discussing the amendments before then discussing the first proposition. Robert's Rules of Orders. There's a cheat sheet available apparently at the and for that and the general conference rules by snapping that QR code. And the rules can be a little intimidating if you're not familiar with them, but this is what we wanted to tell you. Don't worry about that so much. Don't let that stop you from participating if the Spirit is moving you to say something to the body. And like I said, the bishop and other people on the bishop's staff will help you if you don't quite know the regular procedures. It's friendly, it's okay if you don't know. But basically, you shouldn't let having the right language prevent you from speaking. You'll notice on your table when you go there, usually it's a brightly colored piece of paper that instructs on how to introduce yourself when you do go up for comments. Many of us are familiar with this too, but they basically want you to cover a few points every time you get up to speak in front of the body. They want you to say your name, what church you go to, whether you're lay or clergy, and then for you to identify yourself, your race and gender. It seems a little tedious for people every time to get up and do that. Or you could just put it out there and then get onto your comment, because it serves several purposes. One of it is just to make sure that there's a balanced conversation, that people from lay and clergy are neither one of them are dominating the discussion. Same thing with genders, races, and the way that's done is by keeping these tally of who goes up, and then every day they tell us, here's how many people, here's how many lay, and here's how many clergy got up to speak, or men and women, so you can really see, okay, so we need to hear more from lay people, for example, or we've heard a lot from one particular group, and we need to hear more voices from underrepresented groups. So it's trying to make sure that everybody has a voice, and it's not like legislated. It's not like you have to make sure you pass some test before you can even get up there. It's just a way of keeping us accountable to that each day. And the other thing about it too is the reason why we identify ourselves is because we have the power to describe who we are. It's better than having somebody up in a booth saying, oh, there's a white male. Well, maybe that person is part Native American or something like that, you know. So it's really important to be able to self-identify. Yes?
The Commission on Religion or Race and the Role and Status of Women, they mandate us to monitor at every conference. So we need to.
So, yeah, it's something that the conference has to do. And you'll get used to it, and there's a little cheat sheet on your table that, in case you forget, bring it up to the microphone with you, and you can tick off all the relevant points, and then get on with your comments. Everybody has something to offer to annual conference. If you're having a thought, the Spirit's moving you, get up, you know, overcome whatever inhibition you might have about standing in front of a group of hundreds of people, and just let it fly, because that's what this conference is all about. That's why we have annual conference, and the fact that our denomination is so democratic, you know, maybe even more so than the United States. I mean, we really want to hear. We don't. I'm glad you laughed at that. So, you know, what I meant is, like, it's not representative democracy. We don't have an electoral college. You know, it's the people have a voice, and everybody has an equal vote. And that's a really unique thing about our denomination too. It's not like we have decrees from a pope or a bishop or something. Here's the way it's going to be. So even though it's a little messy sometimes, it seems like, or even chaotic, you know, this is the way we get things done, and this is the way that we're formed. And you know, just keep that in mind, that you know, you're doing this because every voice should be heard, and everybody has a voice. All right, so I think that's about it for that, and I'm going to hand it back over to Bob so we can hear about to Bob and Tara, so we can hear about the clergy and the laity sessions. Before I do, yes. I think that's usually can be decided by the bishop, right? I think they have the technology. Okay. Okay. Bob and Carol are going to talk about it.
I'm going to let Carolyn speak about it, because she is the secretary to the annual conference who receives all the votes and certifies them. So go ahead, Carolyn. You want to take the mic back there?
All right, sorry. I forgot about live. Most of the votes will be, we're not using machines. Most of the votes will be just the way we usually do, the pink pieces of paper, or the bishop, however he says, hand, if he says stand up, if he says jump up and down, that's what you got to do. Don't tell him I said that, because I don't want to put ideas in his head.
Oh, please.
You. The ratifications, however, will be paper ballots. And I may be saying something you're going to say, but the more we say it, the better we are. I will not tell you the results. You cannot know our local results, because our results will be aggregated with the rest of the denomination. And we cannot divulge what ours are for concerns of not impacting annual conferences that had not yet met. So the two people who will be counting our votes are actually not even going to be casting votes. They're not going to be registered members. They're going to be guests, volunteers, so that nobody knows. Nobody will know except for the bishop and I and our two volunteers. And the ballots have to follow a specific outline and format and language and all of that. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
And then some. You gave me a microphone.
Is that those will be in writing, but Tara's going to speak a bit more about
Yes,
that.
yes, that'll be in writing.
So,
Thank you.
clergy session, your Methodist history moment for the day. Back in 1784 in Baltimore at Lovely Lane Methodist Church, there were only clergy present. And at that annual conference on Christmas Day, by the way, with only clergy present, Francis Asbury was elected one day as a probationer, and the second day as an elder, and then the third day as a bishop. Fastest one to get through it. So the annual conference comes as a function of only being clergy. As we move through our history, a balance was sought so that now the annual conference is in the best expression, half clergy and half laity. That is why there are lay equalization members. I'm really glad to say that in Binghamton and Oneonta District, our lay equalization member ballots are full, which means that we are closer to that equity. Do we always get that equity? Well, every retired member who is a clergy person, every retired clergy elder has the right to be at annual conference. So sometimes that can all kind of be a little screwy in terms of getting those numbers absolutely equitable, but the goal is to make them as equitable as they possibly can be. I remember the day when there was no clergy session, when laity and clergy all voted on clergy matters together. Does anybody else remember that? Ken does. That was back in the day. That was I want to say, was that pre-1980, Ken? Might have been. And that was before the clergy were separated from the laity in terms of having a clergy session. So what we do at clergy session is the clergy portion of what is called the business of annual conference. Since the days of John Wesley, who was such an organized person, there has been this form called the business of annual conference, where he had all these questions that had to be clicked off. There are specific questions that deal with the clergy in terms of electing elders, electing provisional elders, electing deacons, electing provisional deacons, approving all the licensed local pastors. Licensed local pastors think that as soon as they're approved and get their licenses, that they are officially approved. They are recommended in terms of getting their license and then finally approved at the clergy session, as are, by the way, all certified candidates for ministry, which some people are looking at getting completed. So there is that work as well that all happens in the clergy session. This year, we will take a few moments and talk about the importance of those who are pastoral leaders, which is everyone who serves in that role in a local church, in terms of getting their pastoral leader profile done so that we as superintendents can get our one-on-ones done with you. So please, you're going to hear a little bit of a teaser about that. Please hear that and take those words to heart, because we really need that work done in a timely fashion. The other thing that will happen in the midst of that will be a little bit of a workshop for those of us who are clergy in the clergy session about pension. Now, there will also be a presentation to the entire annual conference about pension, but there will be a specific presentation from Westpath regarding the new pension program that General Conference just approved that kicks in January 1st, 2026. For those who are counting, this will be my 5th pension program, so I'm just really excited, to be part of all 5 or 6 or however many I've been part of now. So that's kind of what happens at clergy session. Those of you who are in, I was so glad that Tara put in this, because, sometimes I've joked and said to laity, well, that's where we share the secret handshake and, get all that information out so that... There you go. So, that's what happens at clergy session. There's actually quite a bit of voting that has to happen and quite a few names that come before us. And we do also honor clergy who have deceased, clergy who are retired, and give appropriate due to those who have gone through that process of becoming pastors to celebrate their ministry. That's clergy session.
Although I just yelled at Bob for stealing my joke about the laity session. It's like, I'm not telling the clergy here what we do there, right? No. It's less business-like. We don't have the same requirements as laity, but we absolutely take advantage of having this time together. Sometimes we hear reports from our lay groups, our general conference delegations, what's going on in the church. Last year, we had a wonderful time of kind of dreaming and scheming together, where we met one another and talked about the church we wanted to help build together. And this year, a laity session. I'm sorry you're missing it, clergy, but we're going to do some intercultural competency training. That sounds right, very official, but it's going to be led by Deacon April Casperson. She's with the Methodist Theological Seminary of Ohio. And we're just going to learn how to better live together, learn more about each other. Diversity training from race and ethnicity to age to background to socioeconomic. It'll help us live together better. And I'm really looking forward to the Board of Laity putting this on for us. Belinda's part of it. I'm a new member now that I am your Binghamton District lay leader. And it's not really a secret. And sometimes we even let some clergy come in and join us. But we don't do a handshake. I don't know what you're talking about. But it's a really fruitful time together. And I'm happy we have the flexibility to try some different things. And this year we'll be getting to know each other in some new ways. And that I think will benefit the church here in Binghamton, Upper New York certainly, and then through that, the denomination as a whole. As we hopefully delight and surprise one another through the conversations we have at the laity session this year. I think that's it, unless anyone has questions about what else we do there. Okay, I think it's back to you, Rick.
Okay, and just on the ladies session too, I just, because I've been a little bit involved in the planning also, and different than what Bob said, it's not a chance for the laity to do their business, because basically we're doing the business during the rest of the conference, so we usually use it as a chance to, better form ourselves, maybe do a training, some learning, and also be able to interact with each other. To use that opportunity where everybody's together in one place to hear more about what others are doing and learn from each other. So we're looking forward to that laity session. Now I'm going to talk about, next slide please. The annual conference workbook is going to be available also a week from Tuesday. So when we repeat this session in Unadilla next month, it might be a little bit longer than what we're doing here, because at that point we will have the conference workbook out and we can get into more of the specifics of the resolutions and I call it resolutions, right?
And
Recommendations, reports, resolutions, all that good stuff. So we'll be able to see a little bit more about what's actually going on this year. For now, we just want you to know that it's coming out on the 15th, and you can get it on the conference website. What are you going to find in there? Recommendations. So, as the screen shows, there's going to be recommendations made that are going to need decisions by our whole body in basically these 5 major areas. The budget, the Finance Committee is going to introduce the proposed 2026 budget. So that'll be the subject of some discussion. And again, the more you can read ahead of time to be informed about these things, the better off you'll be, and you'll feel like you're making a more informed vote. Pensions and health benefits is going to be a big topic this year. Equitable compensation is something that comes up every year, I think. Advanced specials, these are deciding what our mission projects are going to be in the coming year as an annual conference. What else do we have? And the Child Victims Act Task Force, there's still things that impact our conference that we need to be doing in the aftermath of what's gone on with that. And I'm really not too familiar with that. Is that a new law, that Child Victim Act?
It's now we're part of the Boy Scouts of America settlement. It's a New York State specific law to help ensure that children who faced abuse in churches and other organizations can, through the courts, be compensated. Not that it fixes anything, right, but the church now has an obligation to help support the victims. And so for a couple years now, we've been working on our part in Upper New York. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure we'll hear from them a report on how we're funding.
Okay.
And actually, the law has.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's dealing with the aftermath of the Boy Scouts settlement, and then also looking forward at this new law and how we.
Well, no, the law.
No, okay.
Its timeline is done.
Okay. So we'll get a status on all that.
I think of it as how we're responding to the changes, how we're responding to the law, how we're responding to the Boy Scout stuff.
So it'll be an update on how we're responding to all that, and yeah, and that's what we get from a lot of the other committees too. Informational reports. You can go to the next slide. From all the conference teams, we'll hear from the United Women in Faith, all right, and the Board of Laity, the Board of Trustees. We'll hear from deaconesses and home missionaries. We'll hear from Global Ministries and more. They'll all have reports for us. We should have some informational reports from other connected organizations too, such as Africa University and the seminaries, Duke Gammon, is that it? Gammon Seminary and St. Paul's Seminaries. We have the usually pretty sad part of dealing with church closures. When we hear about churches that are seeking to close their buildings this year and having to vote on what they're trying to do because it has to be approved by annual conference. And usually there's a chance there to kind of celebrate some of the life of those churches that are going away. And then, of course, the resolutions and petitions. And we don't even know how many there are, right, at this point. Some years there's a lot more than others. Last year it seemed like kind of light. I don't know. Do you have a comment on that?
Linda, can I have you repeat your question with the microphone? Sorry, I was not ready for it.
I'm asking if resolutions and, am I on?
Yes.
Okay. If resolutions and petitions will be the last thing on the agenda, because what happens is we don't get to them, and these are important things that people have brought to annual conference.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that too, it seemed like last year we really didn't have enough time.
My response to that is the bishop is in the chair.
Suggested to him that we want to address these sooner?
It's interesting, there's been, not so much with him, but cabinet discussions about how annual conference is structured. One thing we'd love to do would be to make the announcement of the appointments, for instance, up front. Just get it out of the way so that we can move on with other things. I do not know that that has been specifically placed before the bishop. That's a little more of a conference staff conversation, I believe. Carolyn,
Okay.
you got anything on that?
I was going to say the same thing you did.
Okay.
It's a bishop decision, and Glenda, I think he would listen to you if you brought the suggestion to him.
Well, I certainly will.
Simple email, yep.
So many
Okay,
people
thank you.
felt that way, and you would think that, maybe they got the feedback through evaluation forms or something like that. I mean, I heard people saying, we should have another plenary session, last year. And so they were like willing to spend more time so they can get to those things. But now, okay, so we're kind of in question and answer session. If certain resolutions or petitions don't get discussed, don't they have to somehow be discussed or decided on after the conference? Not necessarily. All right, so that's part of the reason people don't want to.
That's a new
Let those
general
slide.
conference rule that everything must be addressed in plenary, but it's not an annual conference rule. If you don't get to it, you don't get to it. It goes into the ether, and then maybe if you don't get to your petition that you submitted, save it for next year and fill out your evaluation form or reach out directly to the bishop. He answers his emails quite quickly. I'm really impressed, and is open to conversation and feedback. I probably didn't need to.
Also, during annual conference itself, if it feels like we're not paying enough attention to it, rise up and speak to that, right? All right.
Do I dare say we approve the agenda, and if we want to make changes to it, the
I have an
body
amendment.
has that ability.
So yeah, and if you haven't been there before, you'll be amused by the amendment process, entertained, for a while, and then we'll get lost in, whether we're doing the amendment to the amendment or what are we voting on. And
You can check your cheat sheet at your resource page.
we're all in it together, though. That's the thing. So the resolutions and petitions we don't know yet, but they're submitted by individuals and groups within the conference. They're looking for like a united stance by our entire conference, or maybe some type of action on, like, usually religious or social issues. We don't yet know, but just as an idea, these are the resolutions we voted on last year, beginning the work, or we didn't actually vote on all of them, did we?
No, one was withdrawn, but these are an example of what could come before us this year. It'll be not the same ones, right? But
Examples
this is
of
spirit.
the kinds of things that come out.
Yeah.
So we might see some of these things, or not exactly, but work of reparations, referring to post-Civil War and slavery here in the United States, local congregation seminary grants and scholarships, resolution to create a parental leave policy, time off policy. Here's one that's kind of like, a political stance. Could we end U.S. funding for Israel's military occupation of Palestine? And another one about firearms and whether they can be carried in churches. Some of them can be a little bit contentious and controversial, or even political. And sometimes, we don't all come to a consensus on it. A lot of times it's the way that it's written and what it's actually saying that can turn people's support for it one way or the other. And then sometimes the writing or the words are changed by amendment live as we're there, and sometimes makes more people able to consent to it. But it's all a pretty interesting process, I think. The point is, like I said, it's a democratic body. We want everybody to participate, and we feel like you need to be informed too to be able to participate. I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I want to vote one way or another about something if I haven't really looked into it. I feel like I'm not doing my proper duty of being prepared. So, in that line, that's a great reason to look at your workbooks ahead of time, study them, know what resolutions are going to be coming up, and you can reach out to the people who are proposing them too. Every one of them lists who's sponsoring this or who's bringing this before the body, and contact information. And you are very much encouraged to reach out to them with any questions you have, or if you see something that's maybe an error or something, or anything that you want to question about the resolution ahead of time, can start the debate, and it might bring something important to the attention of the people sponsoring it. And it might just improve the quality of the debate while we're at annual conference too. So read your resolutions ahead of time and get into them, and go ahead and contact people. They're really interested. They're really happy to hear from you. And they can either clear up the confusion or maybe make updates to the conference information. That's the thing just we want everyone to remember is that we're all on the same team, right? Even clergy and laity. We've heard it called 𝘾𝙀𝙏𝙍𝙏𝙀𝙊𝘿, right? We're all together on the same team. So thank you very much. Before we take a break, are there questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, here comes the microphone.
Well, it's a quick question.
Okay, but I want the live stream to hear us.
What are the new numbers at conference? I mean, we've lost not only churches that closed, but a number that went global as far as churches and pastors. So what kind of numbers are we looking at now?
Not really sure.
Registration is still open. I don't think we'll get a really solid understanding of how many to expect at conference until registration closes. We know that there was around 120 that disaffiliated. I can't give you off the top of my head how many have actually closed in the past couple of years, but so you'll estimate that in your mind. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the official number is right now of how many churches are part of this conference, but I'm sure they're going to update us about that.
I think we're still near 600.
In the 600s?
Over 600. So we're still a big conference even after disaffiliation. We'll say around that. There are around 600 churches in the Upper New York Conference. And that's a lot of us still. There should be a good showing at the On Center May 22nd to 24th.
Other questions?
Encourage people. And like Bob said, invite your retired clergy friends. They have voting rights. Every annual conference is important. This year, we've got some big things to do together with the constitutional amendments. There's no reason why our retired clergy shouldn't take advantage of this right and also the time to be together with their fellow Upper New Yorkers. I'm sure there's some reasons, but I'm going to say this is a special year. Please reach out to your retired clergy friends.
But yeah, no matter what the business is in a particular year, and this is an important one, as we'll hear more about pretty soon, but just the fact that we can come together as the church, that's one of the most inspiring things about it. Just huge room full of all people that, we're all part of the same body, and, we're all Christians. We're all there for our service and for the mission of the church. So that can be really inspiring and energizing in itself. I have a question. I thought that each individual church is required to send a representative to annual conference.
Each charge.
Mm-hmm. But I've run across a few lately that said, no, we don't have anyone going to annual conference. So
well, we should encourage them
how does that happen?
to make sure someone does go. For every clergy in a charge, there's a lay person should also be going to represent that charge as well. Mm-hmm.
And so if there's not a clergy person there too, that the lay person might not even be encouraged to. So I guess as district lay leaders, we should be pointing this out, or
Yep. I can vow to make sure that I continue to reach out and encourage our Binghamton district churches to have a layperson go. And we can hold more sessions like this, right? And invite new people, young people. Annual conference, it might sound silly, is why I'm here today. I grew up in United Methodist Church. I was nurtured there, but there was something about annual conference. And I had never gone before. 2 United Women in Faith members said, you'd be great at this. And they gave me a ride, and I have friends that I met that day that are still my friends, and I'm 44, going on 45. Yeah. Annual conference is more than just business and polity. It really is why I'm standing here.
Last year, the Board of Laity, I think, or somebody was encouraging us to invite youth to come to the conference. Mm-hmm. So I found 2. I found one, and then another one wanted to go too, from a local church. And then now it turns out this year they're going to go again. So it's like we did a good thing.
It takes persistence and maybe some consistent invitations. People, but new folks of all ages would be great. I want people to experience annual conference. Maybe they won't feel the same way about it as I do, but at least they'll have a chance to be in that place together. And also, right, that brings new voices into our decision making. And if we're doing our jobs right as United Methodist, the more empowered voices there, the better.
If a church is being served by certified lay, then how do they vote? And if they're not considered a clergy, then how does that equal out for numbers?
Yeah.
This is my wheelhouse again. And it is the bane of my existence right now, if I may say that. The local church is responsible for naming and electing and sending a lay delegate. CLMs are lay members, right? Certified lay delegates. So they would register as the lay delegate to the church. That CLM, in the equation of it all, then balances one of the retired elders or clergy members, okay? So when I'm calculating the number that each district should be recruiting, I'm looking at the overall numbers at the conference, how many retirees we need to expect, and how many clergy we should expect based upon the number of charges. Excuse me. And then we look at, I did that backwards. See the bane of my existence. I did it already. I don't want to have to think about it again. Ready? I calculate clergy by looking at the number of appointed, the number of active, as well as the number of retirees. I look at the number of laity based upon the number of charges. The difference between the two is what I then ask the districts to recruit to make sure we have an equal balance of the folks who are allowed to be there. If they get there, that's between them, God, and not me.
And that also assumes that each charge is sending a person like they're supposed to, right?
Thank you for that very last line.
Yeah.
Yes.
For the live stream folks, speaking is our conference secretary, the Reverend Carolyn Stowe. So that's how she knows so much. Yeah.
That's how I'm trying. That's why I'm struggling.
Right. Rick and I help with the lay equalization. The Book of Discipline gives us voting membership of our annual conference. So if your district doesn't have a lay leader, encourage one, and then they have a voting place. They have a seat at the table. So there's efforts made within our conference rules and the Book of Discipline to name people in addition of laity, the lay equalization, to help balance the vote too. And I meant to shout out to the Methodist Protestant Church, if we're talking about history. They were the first to invite laity to vote at their annual conferences. So we'll thank them back 1800 something. I don't know the dates, but I know it was them. They were the first to ordain women too. I wasn't there.
1890, Bob says.
Okay, 1890.
You have something? Okay, I saw your hand. Other questions or discussion? You ready to take a short break, I guess? Okay. It's break time. What do we want, 10 minutes?
15 minutes says
15
the PowerPoint
minutes.
slide, yeah.
Please eat some of the food that's been provided.
Yep, it's annoying that you have to wait till I get you the microphone, but you'll be fine. Mhm. Okay. Is Iris over? Okay. So, she had originally said she wanted to help me. So I want to offer her that opportunity and at least give her a chance to say no. I would hate for her to feel like I denied her something. Good. Or if it wasn't about you, it was about something that you didn't need to hear. Yeah. Well, that's when I'm talking about United Women Faith and like women having the space to meet. I'm like, sometimes they just need the room to be together as women, like, and don't deny them that. Hi, kiddo. Well, my talk might be a little long, but I know you wanted to maybe help. You want to talk for 4 minutes. Okay. Is there something you want to say? Ooh, don't palm that. Don't palm that. There's water in there. Blessed water, honey. What do you want to say? I have a script if you want to read some of it. Okay. We're going to go. People are coming back in? Yep, it's up front. Probably be up here, honey. Oh, you're going to learn. I can get my iPad to open. There we go. Okay. We'll see if our booth is ready. You want to ask him on the microphone, are you ready in the booth? Go ahead. Are you? Okay. Well, I've got a microphone. You can hear me? Can everybody hear me? Okay, I can hear myself. You want to Yay! Do you want to test your microphone? Go ahead and ask the booth if they're ready.
You ready, booth?
Okay. I will keep mine on. So you've met me as Tara, the Binghamton District lay leader. I'm a member at Tabernacle in Binghamton. And my day job is the Director of Denominational Relations. So, I've got my own, honey. That's a mouthful, right? I work for United Women in Faith, so one of the denomination's agencies. And so part of what I do on a daily basis is to help members of United Women in Faith, formerly United Methodist Women, understand how the United Methodist Church works. It is a full-time job. It is a very full-time job. But right, it's to help empower them to be in the decision-making spaces. So I want to translate some of that to all the laity, right, in the Binghamton District, Upper New York conference that I love so much. And this is my daughter, Iris. She wants to help me get things started. So you ready? You want to let people know about the Constitution of the United Methodist Church? It's right up there at the top. You can read as much as you want. Go ahead.
Like the United States, the United Methodist Church is governed by a constitution. The UMC Constitution was adopted in November 1966 by General Conferences of Evangelical United Brethren and Methodist churches who united to become the UMC in 1968.
Good job. Do you want to keep going? All right. Thank you, Iris. So that constitution can be found, they're paragraphs 1 through 62 of our Book of Discipline. The United Methodist General Conference that meets every 4 years, unless there's a pandemic. tries to meet every 4 years and hopefully shall and for the days to come. 2/3 of the elected delegates to the General Conference can change our Constitution, but it takes a 2/3 majority vote. And then that must also be supported by 2/3 of every single voting member of every annual conference of every United Methodist annual conference around the world, the Philippines, in Africa, in Europe, every annual conference of the United States. And Bob spoke about this a little bit earlier. We passed some constitutional amendments in 2024. There are 4 ballots in front of you, actually. And it is an aggregate vote. That's what Bob was talking about. So even if the Upper New York Conference passes overwhelmingly or doesn't pass overwhelmingly, how we stand as an annual conference, this is one of the votes that it does not matter because it's every individual's vote that goes into the final tally called aggregate voting. And I should say up front, as a person who works for United Women in Faith, we do support all of the amendments. So I'm coming from that place, and the slides that I'm using come from the United Methodist, the communications agency. They were commissioned by the Council of Bishops and the Connectional Table, who also supports the amendments passing. I did my best to make these just informational for you, but you will notice a positive trend in them. But it is our duty to support the decisions of General Conference, who, these folks, the Connectional Table, United Women in Faith, are beholden to in a way that you as individuals aren't. So if you have some questions, we're going to have a big Q&A time at the end, but go ahead and raise your hand and I'll bring you the mic. We can ask questions during it too. But I wanted to be transparent about who I am, where I'm coming from, but to say too that I did my best to try to offer information that will help you make your decision about how you feel about what's coming up. Sorry, I'll get back on script. So it might be kind of hard to see, but if you go to the link we shared earlier, you can find some of these slides. What it shows is that a difference of 6 votes of all the millions of United Methodists around the world can make the difference between a yes or a no, a constitutional amendment passing or not passing. So every vote matters. We know that, but here's a way to show that it's not just a platitude. This one's really important. If you don't want these to pass, make sure you're there to say no. If you do, make sure you're there to say yes. Every vote counts. I wanted to say that before I even got into the text, the information of what we will be voting on. Every vote counts. I'm going to catch back up. So here, ballot number 1. I know I keep referring to that link, but I want to make sure you have access to information. The drafts of the ballots that we'll be voting on are already available. So you can go ahead and either find it on umc.org or go to that link. I've downloaded them and put them in that folder for you. So you can see the text of what you'll be voting on already, and then you'll receive it again at annual conference. The paper ballots you'll be able to read, and then they'll be collected. So ballot number 1 is a big one, regionalization. Some of you may have heard this term before. Some of you, like Harold, may have been in many, many, many conversations. Pastor Harold is a member of our jurisdictional conference delegation. So I may be calling on him during my presentation too. Regionalization is a change in structure in the United Methodist Church, so pretty big, right? This ballot is multiple pages because it makes multiple changes to our Constitution. But as you read through it, you'll see some of those changes are the same change in different places. But I'll get into what we mean by regionalization. And the slides that I'm going to be showing here as well, all of these slides come from the communications agency that I spoke about before on behalf of the Connectional Table and the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters and the Council of Bishops, who all would love for regionalization to pass. Saying it again. So you'll see the original text of the Constitution, and your ballot will then show you the changes we wish to make. So that'll be part of the process. And regionalization will have lots of changes for you to go through. It was submitted by the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters, so groups outside the United States are the ones who presented this to General Conference. Requires quite a few changes, but they'll be sensible. Once you dig through them, you'll see, oh, I see what they're aiming for here. It's hoping to move the church away from a US and other. That is how we're structured right now. We are the United States, and then there are central conferences outside the United States. What regionalization, the big picture, is to make the United States a regional conference as well. We'd take away the term central conference and be a collection of regional conferences. So instead of US and other, we'd be regional conferences. And so what this photo shows, you might be wondering why that is the photo I chose. That is Bishop Tracy Smith Malone, and behind her is the vote at General Conference for regionalization. And as you can see, the great majority, more than 2/3 of the General Conference delegates who are elected around the world supported regionalization. And the following slides that now we can get into, these come from the United Methodist Church itself. What regionalization is hoping to accomplish is effective ministry in every culture. I'm hoping after this time together that you'll know more about what regionalization is and the opportunity it presents. Try to listen with an open heart and be ready to learn something new and be ready to share something you may know that I have forgotten to share, or as the Spirit calls you. So the goal of regionalization is to allow United Methodists to best connect to their communities, whether they be in Africa, whether they be in the Philippines, here in the United States, which in itself has different communities, right? We're a large country, or Europe. We all are living in unique circumstances. Our neighborhoods are different and the needs of those around us are different. Our cultures are special and we want to celebrate that in the church. With regionalization in place, hopefully, we can better minister to the people around us because each region of the church can make its own decisions based on its own contextual ministries, context, laws, right? What is law in the United States is not law in the Philippines and vice versa. We want to be able to be a church that has the ability to meet the needs at that time, at the place it's in. And hopefully every United Methodist can then better live into our shared mission to make disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world. So regionalization planning and legislation, this has been going on for a long, long time. Among a lot of people, conversations, most of them born outside the United States, which is a good thing, right? If we're going to practice being a more global church, following the lead of those who aren't in the United States, well, this is an opportunity to do that too. And especially those who are not in the United States would probably have the best ideas of how to make our church less US-centered. So we've been having these conversations for a long time. And like I said before, there was the overwhelming majority of the General Conference delegates who supported this. It was a surprise to those of us who had been in those conversations for years and years and years, thinking like, all right, maybe we'll get this passed, and then, oh boy, did it pass. But it was because people worked together and listened to each other and took the time to make changes, to build this plan together. So it wasn't something that one person sat in their office and wrote. This plan is something that was truly collaborative, which I'm proud of United Methodist doing, especially with everything that's gone on in this denomination in the past couple decades. People came together and did this. Okay, so with regionalization, all parts of the denomination should be more equal, right? If it does what the drafters are hoping it would do and what General Conference believes it will do, that will help us build trust in one another in maybe a way we haven't been able to because we haven't done a great job of taking care of one another in the United Methodist Church when we've disagreed. But I'm hoping this is a new day where we can disagree because we should be disagreeing with each other, right? We should be having some really good fights, but we can take care of one another in that process. That we should all have the same rights and privileges. No longer will it be seen that the United Methodist Church is centered on the United States. That's not going to happen overnight. But regionalization should be a step that helps us do that. And what a new church that would be, right? I can't really even conceive of it because I've grown up in the United States. My church has been US-centered. So I'm excited to see what will come. And the vision I have probably isn't anywhere near complete. We will be surprised by the things we can do together. And I will say, you know what? If it ends up that it doesn't work, every 4 years we have a general conference, we can come back together and we can say, okay, we need to change some things. So this is big and scary to see all these changes to our Constitution, the thing that we hang on to together. We're United Methodist. We can come back together and make some changes if we need to. With conversations with each other. No one in their basement writing legislation. We want to do these things together in community and conversation. Okay, name change. So you guys are doing great. I go off script, so they're doing their best to follow me. I mentioned already that one of the big changes is instead of using the terminology Central Conference for non-US, we'd all be regional conferences. Consistency and balance. It would create a new US regional conference, which we haven't had before. It would be a new way for us to make decisions together. Bob mentioned earlier that we all come together from around the world at General Conference, and then the overwhelming majority of the things we talk about there is the United States, is based on the United States. The resolutions, the pension plans, because the United States does not have another place to make these decisions together right now. We don't come together as a regional body. The Central Conferences do. So you will have the West Africa Central Conference, the Philippines Central Conference. They can already come together, make decisions based on their context, and adapt the Book of Discipline to their context. And the United States, we cannot. The only place we can make changes for our context is among the global body. So it lends not only to an imbalanced church structure, but the 2 weeks we spend together. And hey, maybe it wouldn't even have to be 2 weeks, right? If we could meet as a body before. Saving us some mission money, right? Sorry, went off again. And we, in fact, at General Conference have already established this new U.S. legislative body. So the U.S. will be meeting even if regionalization doesn't pass, which I think will be good for us moving forward in the church. You may be familiar with some of the fights we've had in the past, some of which have led to a group of our friends leaving and forming their own denomination regarding the inclusion or not of our LGBTQ siblings. Perhaps if the U.S. had a space to discuss this together and adapt the Book of Discipline to our context, maybe fewer people would have been hurt than what has happened. That's not the only reason that regionalization has been placed in front of us, but it's one example of what we hope this would be moving forward. Safer places for us to come together, love one another, make hard decisions that maybe doesn't need to be everybody around the world making decisions for just the United States. And because this is a big change, right, we're gonna have an interim committee who will test some things out, make some decisions together. So you won't wake up the next morning and being a brand new church. Even if this passes, much of what happens at the local level will stay the same. So what would happen if regionalization passes? Here's what we would keep. The Constitution would be shared among everyone. So would our doctrinal standards and our theological task, the ministry of all Christians, our social principles will continue to be global. We can't change those in the United States. The folks in Africa, the folks in Europe, those would be our global decisions that we make together. And we would also always, always, always be grounded in our shared beliefs of what it means to be United Methodist, right? That will not change. We can't, as the United States, come together and say, oh, you know what, we don't believe in Jesus anymore. That's not gonna happen anyway, but we would not have the right to say that as the United States, right? Or of any other country to change our solid core beliefs. They will stay the same. They will be always the purview of the General Conference, the global decision-making body together. regionalization is a big change, right? But at the local level, the district, even the conference level, it would be mostly business as usual, even as we live into this new structure. The biggest change for us would be that when we are electing our jurisdictional and general conference delegates, they're also going to be the folks who represent us at that U.S. Group, that U.S. legislative body that I spoke about. You're all doing really great letting me use all these polity terms, but there's no way of getting around them when we're having this conversation. So I'm glad you had some coffee before we came back together. So, right, but even the process of how we elected our delegates remains the same. It would just mean they'd have a place to come together as just the U.S. and make decisions for us in this context. So that should help us save significant time and money at General Conference, right? We want to continue to have this global decision-making body, but for it to be 2 weeks long, you can ask my family here, I was gone for half a month in April and May this year. They were great, they were fine, but it's still a long time to be gone no matter what, and to be in a place that's beautiful and wonderful, but also heavy. Big things happen there, right? If we can do some of that work, you know, in different regional places and then come together, a shorter general conference, there's more we could do there together too, more conversations we could have and make big decisions, right? Important ones, but not have to take 2 weeks. And maybe it can happen in places other than the United States too. That might be able to open us up to the ability to meet in some of our non-US wonderful conferences where we haven't done yet. We have never had a general conference outside the United States. So what this would mean too is that we could have our own regional book of discipline. We'd have a global book that everyone shared, and if it passes, we'd have a US book of discipline. Because there is already a Philippines book of discipline, there's already a Eurasia book of discipline. The central conferences have their own books of discipline that they use in their context. The US, we have the book of discipline. So this would give us a chance to do new ministries, right? Have some US-based fights that we need to have, right? Part of what we talk about as the United Methodist Church is political. We have resolutions. We have things happening in our country that aren't happening elsewhere. And vice versa, right? Who are we to weigh in on what's happening in other countries if we aren't living through it, right? So we want to, that will help the church work together and give us the freedom to meet the needs we need to today. And so this really just catches the United States up to what is already happening in the other central conferences around the world. So we'd be able to set requirements for ordination and licensed ministry. These would be changes and updates that we can make together as a US body, which already, again, happens in the other conferences. This would be our chance to do that as well. It would help set standards, or we'd be allowed to change some standards for lay membership if we felt the need. Again, these aren't requirements, these are opportunities that we would be given as a US regional body. But if we're happy with the way it is, we wouldn't need to change anything, right? This is not a requirement, but opportunities. We could develop our own rights and practices around marriages and funerals, right? How we do things here in the United States is different than how folks do it outside the United States. And we can, I'm staying on my script, how we organize our annual conferences or our districts, or we already have some of these powers within the Book of Discipline. That would be given to us in our regional Book of Discipline as well. If we have the Judicial Council, but we'd even be able to make a US-based one if we needed to, and so would the other regional bodies as well. We could, see where I am, work with annual conference to ensure policies and practices align with the laws in each country. Some of the decisions we made at the General Conference in 2024, while they aren't prescriptive or telling anyone they need to do anything when it comes to LGBT inclusion, even just having the opportunity to do that violates some laws in some of the countries in which we have United Methodist churches. Uganda, it's against the law to have a gay pastor, right? We as a church have allowed that, which is great. I think that's personally a really great thing for and a great future, but we also need to be cognizant of what that means for others in our church, right? If we're going to be taking care of one another, we need to take care of one another. And being able to adapt the Book of Discipline to not be violating laws if the church itself does not, the local church doesn't want to. this presents that opportunity. We want to be on equal footing. We cannot create our own constitution, right? That goes back to the list of what I said we will all share. We cannot violate the social principles. We can't change those. The Constitution and then the General Book of Discipline will be changed at the General Conference. We won't be able to touch the General Book of Discipline in the US. We will only have our Book of Discipline that we can play around with to help meet our needs. Can't change our doctrinal standards. We won't be able to change our ministry of all Christians or the social principles. We can't change our beliefs. I know I'm repeating what I said earlier, but I want folks to hear we cannot change our beliefs as a regional body. That is something we do as a global body of the United Methodist Church. Okay, that's the end of my spiel on regionalization. Do we want to take questions now or wait till the end? Good, okay, great. We'll move on to the ballot number 2. This one's a very short edit. It just adds 2 words. Oh, we got a question. Coming to you with the mic.
As I understand it, the U.S. will be one region in itself.
Yes.
And there's 8 other regions throughout the world that will be able to change parts of the Book of Discipline. And they'll have their own portion of that.
Yes.
But those things you just mentioned, Constitution, doctrines, social principles, those will be the same in all 9 regions.
Yes, yes. Thank you for putting it that way. They will be the same in all 9 regions and cannot be changed.
Is that true?
Yes, that's true. Those cannot be changed. There'll only be other parts of each. So we'd end up with 8 Book of Disciplines altogether. We have 9, get my math right. We have 7 central conferences currently, but our friends in Africa are going to be creating a new central conference. Sorry to not off the top of my head remember exactly who's doing that, but that's going to happen this summer. So we'll have 8 central conferences outside the United States. Should regionalization pass, we'll have 9 regional conferences, 9 books of discipline, and 1 general book of discipline. But within those 9 books of discipline will be the Constitution, the beliefs, the doctrines, and they cannot be changed.
So the way I understand is that it's going to be clear what can be changed and what can't be changed on a regional basis. And the way I've heard this explained is that it's basically, instead of breaking up the UMC into different regional churches, we want to stay together, but we want to allow autonomy in certain areas. So it's a way of basically just retaining United Methodism and allowing for contextual adaptation of that.
Thanks, Rick. And our jurisdictions will stay too. And it will open up, or we as a US body could decide, okay, we don't need the jurisdictions anymore. That's a conversation to have. But it allows for the now central conferences that they could create jurisdictions to say, oh, we want to have jurisdictions where they don't. So regionalization opens up that opportunity for them too.
Will the regional meet once every 4 years, like general?
Yes,
So
that's a
now
good
there'll
question.
be
Unless
2.
that changes, but that is the plan because that's how the central conferences currently do it. It would be in the lead up to the upcoming general conference. The US body would meet first and then go into general conference with decisions.
My question's about delegates. Have they already identified how delegates would be identified for the regional conference? Would it be the same, just adding in a 3rd layer?
Yep, it would be the folks that we elect to our jurisdictional conference and general conference they would all go to a US regional conference legislative decision-making space. That's a good question too. It wouldn't add any new elections currently as it stands. Maybe that will change in the future, but you're right. We would just be electing jurisdictional conference and general conference delegates who then would be our representatives all in one space together as the United States. So it'd be like if all the jurisdictional conferences came together in one conference, that would be who would be at our US regional conference. So it would mean that the local churches still have a say in who's going to represent us at the U.S. Regional Conference too, by voting at their annual conference. Don't you all love Methodist polity? Isn't this exciting? You're doing great. Did I say that?
Said it's even more democratic than the USA. It struck a chord with you, right? But it is. I mean, in the United States, if we're going to have a constitutional amendment, you have to have 2/3 of the states voting. The states representing, those are the entities that vote in that. But here, the actual people are voting. We're counting individual votes, and that's why this is so important. And even if you think it's going to pass, no problem, or whatever side of it you're on, your vote is going to count because it's going to be aggregated throughout the whole world. So they're just going to count how many total votes there are. So it's really important. Your vote matters. It doesn't matter if you live in a swing state or not.
And part of why we wanted to come together today is to just make sure you knew how to get the information to make your decision on the future of our church, right? In both the big and the small ways. We won't know until November if the constitutional amendment's passed, because the folks who are going to count the official tally will have all our wonderful conference secretaries around the world collecting the ballots. But the Council of Bishops is who is tasked with making that final vote. They're going to, at their November meeting, go through, and then that's when we will know publicly and officially whether they've passed or not. And it is not a given that constitutional amendments pass. Even if General Conference supports them, it does not mean that by the time they go around the world that the individual members supported them. In fact, the next one that you'll see is a simple amendment to the paragraph 4 of our Constitution. Last time we tried this, it didn't pass. By the time it made its rounds, some new descriptions of what this meant that weren't exactly correct had also made the rounds. And so what this does not do is demand that you cannot use the male pronoun for God. So that, right? We're a big church, we're a connectional church, but it seemed to last time cause some contention because they thought adding gender to this particular paragraph meant that we could no longer use the male pronoun for God. It's official UMC polity to be inclusive, but that means not exclusive, right? No, there's nothing in the Book of Discipline that says you can't use the male pronoun. Also says you can't use, there's nothing that says you can't use she, there's nothing that says you can't use they, or just God. There is no prescription. You're encouraged to use multiple pronouns for God or none at all. This change does not, it has nothing to do with how you choose to name God. But I wanted to say that in this space because we know that that's happened in the past where folks thought that's what was happening. This is really just to protect membership categories. Currently, in the Constitution of the United Methodist Church, pastors can discriminate based on gender or disability. And what adding this into our Constitution would say is, well, that we're not okay with that being okay. We would like to make sure that women aren't denied membership. We want to make sure that people with disabilities of all kinds are not denied membership. Right? It doesn't mean that this is being practiced, but we as a church have not said that you can't do it. And this is a chance for us to say, you know what, we don't think that you should be allowed to discriminate based on gender and ability. And again, you can read the paragraph and the amendment at that folder of resources that I shared. That will be ballot 2. Ballot 3 is another, this one's just on one paragraph, we got a question. You want to be mic guy? I'll stay up here.
Before you go on to paragraph 5, paragraph 4, as you see, talks about gender and ability being added.
Yep.
In the present Book of Discipline, you also have marital status, which is not covered in paragraph 4 as going to be voted on.
Say that last part again in the...
Marital status is currently an item that is included, but it is not included in the proposed Article 4 that has to be voted on.
Are you asking if marital status is being removed from paragraph 4?
It's not included in the, yes,
And so that marital status is not currently in paragraph 4.
not in the one that you're being asked to vote on.
Right. So
But it had been in before?
Yes. Yes.
I think that's what he's asking.
okay, no. This amendment is just to add gender and ability. But you're saying that the draft of the takes out marital status? Is that would be surprising.
2017 Book of Discipline.
2016, yeah, 2016.
Okay.
So are we
Pull up my-
eliminating marital status?
Not via this.
I'm just going to read the draft that he's looking at.
Okay.
All persons without regard to race, gender, ability, color, national origin, status, or economic condition shall be eligible. Now, status has a 4 for a footnote, and it just says amended 1992. So I wonder if marital status is status. Do we know what status is?
Well,
Yeah,
that's,
status.
well,
What status of what?
Or not?
But it's in here.
I could tell you what I think it is, right? But that's up to you.
National
Get to
origin.
interpret that as a United Methodist. Let me pull up
It
the
says
current book of
status
discipline.
Or socio, or economic condition. I wonder that if that's why the footnote is there. If it's the footnote, it's explaining that, and that is marital status.
Oh, so it could be that the Judicial Council was presented with this question to define what that
They're
means.
talking about status.
What status?
Actually,
by
here,
itself.
I'll come look at the text.
Right after national origin, you've got
2016.
status.
The 16 Book of Discipline.
Yeah, so by looking at this, the two underlined words that will be
The
added,
paragraph below that one.
if ratified, the paragraph would read as follows. Oh, and so you're saying that they've added,
No, they've taken out
they've taken out
marital
the word
status.
marital.
But it might just be that they took the word marital away, and if you want me to
because there,
show it
yeah,
you?
there's a footnote
Right.
that it was amended in 1992, that the term status.
So those of you who are not, Blenda and I are really enjoying this conversation, but I imagine there are several or more in the room who really could care less at this detail. So forgive us.
No, but this is why we're here, to have these conversations. Because I don't see,
You see where it says national origin in the last paragraph? Midway through?
national origin, status, or
Right after
economic.
that, it just says status.
Yep, and so does the new paragraph. Just says status as well.
Exactly. So he's concerned that we're missing the marital.
Oh, that you think
The new
marital
one
should be?
left out a word from 2017 that should be in. I'm wondering if that word is explained in the amendment.
In one of the footnotes?
Right.
Because, yeah, if this is the original, I thought I had my book of discipline with me on my,
And I didn't think I would be in this role.
well, I think I might have the 2016 one, just not the 2020.
I got told to leave mine in the car always.
Oh, no, I have mine,
Part
I
of being
carry
a
mine with me.
superintendent. I can tell you that in 2018, the bishops announced that Amendment 2 that was before the denomination was, and this was the amendment, the Second Amendment proposed changes to the wording of paragraph 4 of the Book of Discipline. If it were ratified, the proposed amendment would have added gender, ability, age, and marital status to the protected membership groups. It did not pass. That was 2018.
Yeah,
Did not pass in
I don't think
2018.
marital status has ever been a part of that.
And I can tell you that at General Conference, one of the things that was clearly discussed and goes to some extent to the conversation about regionalization is the rest of the world doesn't always look at marriage the way we do. And this was one of the things that was really spoken about quite a bit, particularly from the African point of view, where the issue is, if you're an African male and you're married to 6 women, can you join the United Methodist Church? Anybody got an answer? Not in our cultural understanding, right? This is one of the reasons why I believe, Bob, not your DS, believe that regionalization is important so that we can begin to have some different understandings as to how all this works. Now, I don't know if you were a pastor and someone with 6 wives wanted to join your church, if you would have a conversation with them or not. But I think that might be why marital status is excluded. I do not know, Ken, but I would venture that it might be an issue like that. Maybe not that exact issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So thank you for understanding my surprise that marital status was in there, because I know that it was something that folks had hoped to add at one point and were unsuccessful. Yeah, thanks, Bob, because I was like, wait, did it get in and I didn't know? But these are good questions that I love answering. So marital status did not pass, but I suspect what Pastor Carolyn said, that the footnote might help define what our decision-making bodies have decided status means in that case. For this particular paragraph, well, it depends on their book of discipline. If that's contextually the way that they are going to make disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world, that is right, their right to make those decisions. The right that we come together as a general conference and decide. But thanks. I'm glad Carolyn too said that some of us find this really fun, but so part of why I was a little worried was that there was a constitutional amendment that went around the world that ended up having a typo. And so we had to do it again in 2018. So that's why I was coming over and looking like, oh no, because I know Dr. Fulbright, who is now our secretary of the General Conference, is very fastidious and has gone through multiple eyes, but it has happened in the past that we all did some voting and then realized after it was done that there was a pretty significant typo. Not a big one, but enough to be significant that it changed what we were voting on. So we had to do it again. Hopefully that will not happen again this time. So just adding gender and ability for this one. Get my script back up. Number 3, ballot number 3 that you'll be looking at is a edit to the next paragraph, paragraph 5. And this one came from our friends at the General Commission on Religion and Race. So we have as it stands, a pretty strong statement in our Constitution that we want to be an anti-racist, welcoming, inclusive denomination. We do not want to discriminate based on your race or ethnicity. And our agency tasked with doing this work wanted to strengthen that statement even more for the moment in time we're in, to rally the church to understand that this is important work. So you'll see when you look at this ballot that there's a couple changes that just really kind of dig in even deeper, make our description of how we stand against racism even stronger. And then, it'll be up to you to decide if those are changes we should make. Do we agree that we should have this stronger statement or not? And then paragraph 35 is another, the last one, ballot 4. And this one came from our General Board of Higher Education and Ministry. So we have different voting rights based on your clergy status, right? Laity, we get to vote. All of us get to vote on everything. Clergy have some different standards of your status depending on what you get to vote on, either in clergy session or in the general sessions. So local pastors can vote for general conference delegates if they've met certain educational requirements, right? Yeah, either course of study. What it currently states is if you've completed a seminary education, if you have a Master's of Divinity. What this amendment does is require that seminary be one that's been approved by our university senate. The university senate is an elected body that decides what seminaries folks can be educated at that fit United Methodist beliefs, polity, faith actions, right? It's a long list. It's not very exclusive. There's quite a few, but this helps ensure that those beliefs I talked about earlier that we all stand on, that those are what our clergy are also perpetuating, we'll say. What's coming from the pulpit is United Methodist. We're big tent anyway, beautiful, diverse, so it's not as restrictive as it might seem, but we're United Methodist. We want to make sure that when folks come to a United Methodist Church or the people representing us at decision-making bodies are in line what we've decided to do as God's love in the world together. So that one's just another paragraph. Luckily, all these are pretty short. It's the regionalization one that you might need to take a little bit of extra time going through to see what the changes are. There's that QR code again. Because I can say a lot of words here now and you can absorb them, but I think being able to have some of these resources and knowing where they are in one place can help you out, including the text of the amendments. So I talked a little bit about with paragraph 35, who gets to vote, all lay members. And all elders and deacons in full connection get to vote on these constitutional amendments. This is for you, Paul, the next slide. Provisional clergy, associate clergy, and local pastors cannot vote on these constitutional amendments. If you don't like that, the next general conference is in 2028. You can put in a petition. Oh, okay. I shortened my bullet. Licensed local pastors will not be able to vote on this. So that's one of our fun United Methodist polity things that gets brought up every year. Sometimes some rights get expanded and sometimes, more than often, they don't. But hey, now you know who can and can't vote, and if you disagree with that, you have a process in the United Methodist Church to change it. So voting happens at every annual conference. Some annual conferences have already met around the world. We'll do ours here in the United States in May and June. And we can discuss these amendments, right? We can get up, have our yes or no, or not our yes or no votes. We can have speeches in support, speeches against, but we cannot amend these amendments. We cannot make changes. We could do that for the next general conference if we wanted to, but only discussion. We're voting on what's in front of us and we can discuss them as a body, but we cannot make changes as an annual conference. But it is an opportunity if you want to make further changes to think about 2028 and bring that up to the general conference. And like I said, we will know in November whether these have passed or not. So it'll be exciting. Maybe I'll put the announcement in your link folder. But I'm joking, but I will continue to update that space, especially since we don't have our workbook yet. As new information comes in, I'll throw it in there too. We've got the conference website, which is great. They've got almost all the information we need, but things like a Robert's Rules cheat sheet or the general conference rules, some of that extra information I'm trying to put at your fingertips as well. And maybe I'll offer a quick overview of here's the resolutions, here's a general idea of what they're aiming for, and then of course you'll read every single word before you go to annual conference and vote on them. April 15th, soon. Don't procrastinate. Take it in chunks, right? You want to read some of the reports, and then you want to look at a resolution, right? And then you want to check out the budget, and then take a break, and then read a resolution. So give yourself some time with the workbook. Let yourself be fully informed, especially if reading these things aren't your favorite. Do it in pieces. And then I'm available for questions at any time. I do have the unique role of working for one of the denomination's agencies, but also being a local church member, right? That and in this new position as district lay leader. If I don't know the answer, there's a good chance that I know someone who does, so I can connect you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. I didn't put my email up there, but many of you got an email from me anyway. tbarnes@uwfaith.org. I can hand out business cards. You could tell what I meant by this, right? The business cards, or of course, we've got Bob here. He's good at answering questions too. But I am an additional resource, as is Rick. We're here, right? Use us. If I don't know, I'll know someone who does know. And try not to panic. by thinking that marital got added to that. No, I love those questions. Like, email me. I will be very happy and excited to have that conversation with you. So don't hold back. I think I'm done, and we can move on to any other questions we might have on anything United Methodist while we're here. But
I just want to clarify for Ken, the issue at General Conference that came up was the marital status question got interpreted in some of the language about the conversations, I believe, social principles. I'm trying to think of the exact spot, but we took it out and said that relationships could be defined between two adults. And it was, why wasn't that, marriage between two adults? Because in other cultures, that becomes an issue. The whole marital status issue, to make that something that applies around the world, just becomes very difficult. And I also was thinking about it. So we have this person who's married to 6 women, and then he gets divorced from 5 so that he can be married to 1 and join the United Methodist Church. Well, now he's divorced, which causes cultural difficulties. So I think that's why that issue becomes so, I don't want to say volatile, but there's more questions about it than there are real answers, because we're not going to find culturally one single response that's going to fit everybody. And if that's the case, I think there's some wisdom in stepping carefully. So I believe that might be the reason that is no longer in there.
And right, coming from a U.S. context, adding marital status made sense to me, right? Like, right, I don't want to be discriminated against if I'm not married or if I am married. But if it weren't for, right, our siblings from around the world to say, hold on, we do ministry in a different context. And then, so I learned in that space too. At this general conference, there was a conversation about, how in the United States, a lot of us now do a land recognition. We acknowledge the indigenous folks who were originally on the land we're meeting. Folks who are around the world like, well, what does that look like for me in Germany? What does that look like for me here in Kenya, right? It was, for the United States, we're like, yes, that makes sense. Let's all make sure that we are acknowledging, but it was very US-centered and a lot of well-meaning folks in that space. I'm a well-meaning person most of the time anyway. And then I am so grateful when I get to learn. I'm not always well-meaning, but I strive to, but then I can't know these things until I'm in a body with others who have a different context from me. And not to be all yay regionalization again, but this regionalization will really help us understand that and to move the church away from being so US focused and just open up this opportunity to think of ministries in different ways and to just learn. You're right, what would you do if you're in Mozambique, and what do you mean by indigenous? Just say, hey, welcome everybody, right? Like it was something that was a good thing, but also had not been fully thought through, which you can't know until you don't know, and have wonderful people who are willing to have those conversations with you and open up your hearts and minds, hopefully. What other questions do we have? You might even be ahead of time. I know that was a lot. Don't worry, this is only every 4 years we'll be having this particular conversation, but.
Just clarification. I think you answered it, but I'm a little confused. So these are 5 different constitutional amendments, right?
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus the regionalization is?
Regionalization is ballot 1, but within the ballot is multiple amendments.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like
Okay.
paragraphs that'll be amended.
All right, so that's like constitutional amendment to the max, and then
Yeah.
4 little ones.
It has to address, in order to work, it needs to make changes to multiple paragraphs to be consistent. So,
But
yeah.
now it's still going to be the same procedure. In other words, this affects the entire United Methodist Church around the world, right? And it's going to require 2/3 aggregate
2/3
individual
aggregate,
votes,
individual votes.
just like the other one. Okay.
Each amendment is voted for, the vote for each amendment is tallied individually. So just because you vote for one amendment doesn't mean you have to vote for all the other amendments the same way. I know it sounds silly to say it, but there's some clarity in that if you think about it. So you can be for Amendment 1 and against Amendment 2 and 3. That's perfectly okay. So, yes, separate
Yep.
pieces of paper. You will actually, if the procedure is like it has been in the past, you'll be given a manila envelope that has all the no, we're not doing it that way. Okay, just go. So each one individually? Okay,
But individually, but
so that's good to know.
that is a good question. 4 ballots, 3 of them will be amendments to just one paragraph, but ballot 1 will be changes to many paragraphs. So 1 vote that will be approving many changes, and then you'll have 3 votes that'll be approving changes to 1 paragraph. I don't know if saying that made it more confusing, but okay. 4 ballots, 1 of which will be a pretty big one, we'll say, and then the others will be a little smaller. Not in meaning, not smaller in meaning, but smaller in the amount of text you will have to read and the changes that will be made to it. What other questions do we have? Suggestions on what your district lay leaders could do in the year after annual conference. I mean, after we take a break, after annual conference, what kind of summer or fall gatherings would you like to see happen at the district level?
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you on this because we have, ideas of what we could do at a district day, and I see them as opportunities for people to come together and learn and maybe build their capacity to do their jobs even better. And there are various different subjects that could be useful to learn about in those sessions. And I think too, just get people together and meet each other and talk to each other is always a great thing.
And have a space that you might not be able to, some of the things you can't necessarily do at the local church, let us know.
But if you have any specific suggestions around these ideas, we're definitely open to them. Yeah.
Since I have you all here.
Well, in that vein, Cindy and I had the privilege of visiting Africa with the bishop in February, and we're working on our program, and that some fall district event might be a place where we could share some of that. Africa University is an amazing thing that we are doing, folks, and we would love to share some of that story.
Yes, and the timing of that would be really great, considering they've lost some funding that they planned on having. Maybe that can come back as it travels through the court. Africa University receives funding from USAID, and some decisions that were made.
Used to.
Well, right. So currently, what they did receive is not being received. They may need to seek extra funding, or it could come back. There are avenues to let people know that you don't like that. I can help you connect with your U.S. government representative as well. But so very timely for an institution that we love and is really crucial and important to our church, may need some extra help going forward.
I would just add that the delegation is in support of these constitutional amendments, and you can be on the lookout for some efforts to interpret, to say why we're in support of them. And you'll see those in the weekly digest of the, did everybody get the weekly digest of the conference? The email?
If not, you should. You can sign up for it. I'll put a link to that in our Binghamton district helpful resources. Yes, our wonderful delegation is going to be helping educate on these constitutional amendments as well. I'm just kind of scratching the surface, and I've been in conversation with Carmen Vianese, who is the head of our delegation, too, to make sure that we're in line with what we're saying here today and what the delegation wants you all to know, too. So you'll have more opportunities to learn more and to ask some questions, and yeah, sign up. I'll put a direct link for you to sign up for those. Really helpful newsletters. Right, there's no getting around it, but if you take it in pieces, and if you get home and have some more questions, please do reach out, or ideas. I'm happy to take them. Bob, Rick, I'm gonna speak on your behalf, but I feel comfortable doing that reach out to them as well. What we can do before annual conferences, with more information you need, and definitely what we can do after together too.
So we're about at time, and those of you that know me know that I like to stay on time. So what I would say to you is that part of what I see in the midst of all of this, not only with regionalization, is, friends, you may or may not know this, but you live in a brand new era of the church. And I don't want to say that it's perfect, and I don't want to say that we've made these changes willingly, because you know how many United Methodists it takes to change a light bulb. I'm not even going to tell you the punchline. Because we have to now step into what I believe is a whole new world in the Binghamton district, in your local church, and all the way up through General Conference. And part of this is your role in that massive thing. And you don't get to sit on the sidelines anymore and just kind of watch it all happen and say, gee, 3 hymns and a sermon, and I can go home. Even though that's important, we need to remember the reach out. The bishop was talking to cabinet a few weeks ago, and he said, you know, the one thing that I think we sometimes forget when we talk about you got to do mission and ministry as a church, that individual that comes in our door that needs to sit there and sing those 3 hymns and hear a sermon and pray and then go home, that we might have given that person the only peace they're going to experience that week. Think about that, clergy. Think about that, laity, as you sit in church and look around at your group, that that's really what we are called to be as the church. This liminal time, though, just feels humongous, like we're bearing so much. And so that's why I'm going to ask that you take care of yourself. Know that Jesus loves you. Know that we are called to be God's people together and to do things together and to live in that love always. Go forth in peace. Thanks so much for coming today. The women, the United Women of Faith of Endicott Church, have a bake sale downstairs. Are people invited to the luncheon too if they want to come, Paul?
Luncheon is a takeout. There may be leftovers if you want to venture down to the Beverly. You know? You have to know. What's on the menu?
Chicken salad.
Chicken salad, there's cream potato soup, there's a couple. I'm not sure what's left over.
So if you want to take lunch home with you, you want to take baked goods home with you, here's your opportunity. Please do. And thanks to everyone online. Go in peace and may God be with you.